Perfect. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to workshop Zoom 3. And hopefully you have some friends in the other ones. I know my chapter likes to have everyone kind of see these, but also we are recording it. So if anytime anyone else in your chapter wants to kind of review these, the slide deck or the video, they can definitely do it. I believe it's going to be up on our YouTube channel. So that being said, I whipped this up last night. And did everyone see the agenda now on the screen? Are we good there? Okay. So ultimately, at my work and even my previous job, setting up an agenda is very important whenever you're doing time management or anything in general. It's good to tell everyone what they're there for and how long we're planning on taking. So the first thing we did was our little setup. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. Then we're going to do a brainstorming of what type of time management tools and techniques you know already. Then we're going to go through the laundry list that I was able to come up with. And then there is a flow chart of how to pick out the best time management skills based on either what you're trying to accomplish or the type of person that you are. So I found that very useful. Then we're going to do a quick little activity with the group here assembled to see which ones kind of work for different kind of scenarios for the chapters and for the sorority in general, and things that then you can bring back to your chapter. So I thought that would be good. Then we'll finish with a Q&A and any kind of discussion points if we have. Obviously, if after this you have any questions, you can always feel free to email me. And then we'll just do a wrap up, make sure that we're good and ready for the next session. So that being said, I was going through pictures trying to figure out what I wanted to show, and I stumbled across my Facebook that had both of these pictures, and it looked like the national headquarters got an update on the logo and the signage. So the first one was taken when I was on council back in 2016, and then the last one was, I believe, at NatCon 2019, I think. Yeah, it was when we hosted it at national headquarters. So there's a laundry list of words over there. I'm going to summarize it by basically saying this is all on the CVA page. So if you want to look through it more, I went to Marist College in New York, Poughkeepsie. I graduated in 2016. Before that, and just from taking from like the wins that we had before, I did not think I was going to be doing music in college. It was one of those things that I felt I did as, you know, growing up. I really liked it, but in my high school, we didn't have any kind of band program. It was only choir and orchestra, and I don't play string instruments. So I went to college. I'm there doing a bunch of different things, and I saw the band playing at a bunch of sporting events, really liked it. And so I got interested, involved, and it was really, you know, everything after that is just something that has come to me. It's not something I'm seeking out. So now I'm the current chapter president, chapter sponsor. And I started that in spring of 2019, and we're still going strong. I also am a chapter visitation assistant along with 3 of my lovely folks that just joined the Northeast District kind of group. And I also serve as an assessment committee member. So pretty much I'm very involved in different aspects of the sorority even after graduation, which I really enjoy, that I was able to get into the sorority, do my work as an active, but then I can continue it afterwards. It also notes that I play flute and tuba. Right now I'm trying to get back into percussion. I've done a lot of ensembles such as flute choir, orchestra, as a tuba player, and percussion ensemble. So right now we just got a new band director, and so I'm hoping that with that I could be like, you know, I'm just going to put the tuba on the side. I'll still play it at games, but I want to try and get back into percussion. That also has that I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science and applied mathematics. I was the insane person that decided to do both majors, and now they've made a data science major, which is kind of a blend of the two. And so I'm thankful that the college looked at it and was like, okay, that guy did it, so what are we going to do from there? And they made a whole major for it. I currently work at Bluemark, which actually just got acquired by Office Ally, if you know them. They're also a healthcare kind of tech company out on the West Coast. And ultimately, I am teaching people every day how to use our software, and making sure that our software is working for our clients. Basically, when these hospitals or other facilities like doctors' offices need to submit things on behalf of clients and patients, or residents if they're in long-term care, they are mainly doing financial assistance and Medicaid applications. It's a very streamlined process. It's a lot of workflows and making sure that things are running smoothly. And a lot of times, kind of they're resistant to change. So they'll say, well, this is how my program did it before. And I was like, yes, but this is a new system. You have to learn it. So it's a lot of trying to meet people in the middle and see how I can get across them, how I do it and how our company does it. And so that's a really nice feature of the job, is that every day is different. I'm meeting with different people that are from the United States. We have clients all over in different states. So it kind of feels like the sorority a little bit. And I really enjoy that. All righty. So the brainstorming activity is, there's going to be 3 questions, and this is mainly pertaining around time management as we're here talking about it. So the first one is, what time management tools do I know of? So these could be things that are either techniques or apps or like programs or something like that, or just a method that you typically do. And these are things that you don't have to do. Maybe it's something you've learned from one of your friends. Think about someone that seems really organized and has their time management skills down pat, and think of what they typically do. If it's yourself, think about, what would I do if I was told I only have these many hours in a day and I got to get stuff done. And also that you're a human. So, it's not like you're just going to be, I have 2 hours, I'm going to do it and we're good. Sometimes you can't do that. So just write down any kind of tools that you know of. And then the next question is, which ones do you typically use? So I know a bunch. Even while doing this, I found a few that I didn't know of, but I knew of the process, but not the name of it. So it's kind of fun learning that. And there's some that I know specifically don't help me. And that's a good thing to recognize, is that some of the things that work for you are not going to work for other people, especially in a chapter, very diverse. It's gonna, you can't have just a one solution fits all for every chapter. So it's definitely helpful to figure out what typically works for you. And then even when you bring it back to your chapter, you could say, let's look at all of these options. What do we think as a collective would work best for us and how we typically operate? And some of the things that you already do might be baked into your agendas and your chapter meetings and stuff like that. You might not even know it. Okay. And the last one is, what motivates me to get work done? So what motivates you to get the work done? Is it an incentive? Is it sort of, I know I have to do it. Is it procrastination? So I know that there's, only so much time before I have to get this done. Is it a penalty? Like, oh, I'm going to fail this test if I don't study enough, something like that. So consider all of those things that try and make you get work done. Are you really interested in it? Is it, a performance coming up and you want to make sure that you sound the best? Is that something that motivates you? So I'm going to give just a couple more seconds just to walk through that. All righty. So there's these 9 techniques that I found from an article that I'm going to be linking at the end of the slideshow. And most of the things that I already knew, and also things that I was grabbing before I found this article, mentioned all of the things in the article. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. We're going to just kind of combine it all. And it's from a university, I think it's St. Augustine, for health sciences. So it's actually, people were looking at this and figuring it out. It's not just some random person on the internet that's like, I do this and it's certified. So the first one is the 80-20 rule. This is something that I feel I've used before, and it's something that I've had some of my teachers explain to me. And what it is that it's a technique created by an Italian economist that goes by the name of Vilfredo Pareto, I think. And it's the idea that 20% of your actions are responsible for 80% of the outcomes, which also means, conversely, that 80% of your actions is only going to come out to the 20% of outcomes. So sometimes you do a lot of things just to get one little outcome done. And sometimes that's important, but you have to think and prioritize on what can I do smallest to get the best outcome. And so the goal is to figure out, and this is how it works, is that you're going to list out some of the problems that you're facing. These could be things, the example is that your grades are slipping. I'm thinking maybe, we have a lot of deadlines. We have some projects we have to work on. You're still a human, so you still have basic needs that you have to make sure that you're doing, basic hygiene. You have a student aspect of it. You want to make sure that you're still getting good grades, and that you have maybe family and friends that you have to worry about. You have the sorority, band. There's all of these different facets of of life that you're trying to incorporate. So sometimes those problems add up in one little department. And then you want to identify the root cause of each problem. So sometimes it is, this example is that maybe your grades are slipping because you're spending too much time on social media or some other distraction. These things, I would say, as I just group them, these are kind of ways that you can look at it and say, well, all of these have to do because I'm in band. So that could be something that is the root cause of the problem. Maybe I don't have enough time because I'm doing too many ensembles. You assign a score to each of the problem. And so this could just be relative. There's no grid or something like that to kind of put in, but it's something that you would assign and say, this is a very big problem. Maybe there's some conflict in the chapter. And so that is now causing people to look negatively at going to chapter meetings. How do you fix that? That would be a very big score. Then you're going to group the problems together by the cause. So we're going to make sure that this one is that we're spending too much time on social media. So you'd want to make sure that you're grouping all of them together in those kind of areas. And that way you can then see, okay, if there's, some sort of conflict with one person in the sorority, but I also see them at band and I also see them in my class and I see them outside because we're getting lunch, all of those different things would now group up together. And my one action of maybe talking to them would now affect all of those different facets. And then you take the action. So maybe go grab lunch with the person, maybe make sure that you're planning more time to get the things done accordingly. So that way you're able to set up and prioritize what you should be working on. There's also this methodology of if you prioritize and you give the biggest problem the most attention and bang it out first, I think that would be a very useful piece of advice to make sure that you're always looking at all of your problems. And as one new arises, now you've already had categorized everything else. And you can kind of even look at it in the future and say, just a month ago or last semester, I really had these problems. And now you look at your current problems, and you're like, okay, those things are gone. And it's nice to reflect on how you've been improving. And so the types of people that benefit from this one specifically are problem solvers, because you're looking at every single thing as a problem and you're trying to gauge what is priority, and then analytical thinkers. So if you really like the idea of, I know exactly how each of these work and you're trying to map it out, that would be beneficial. The next one is the Pomodoro technique. And this one I think has plenty of apps. And there's also just, you can use timers on your phone to use it. And what it is that there is this entrepreneur that decided to break down the intervals in which you work. And this is something that I think makes the most sense because burnout's a thing. And also if you think about just doing something like a huge project without any breaks, you're in a 3-hour rehearsal and you don't get any time to just, go up to the bathroom or something like that. You're going to stress yourself out, and it's going to it's going to lead to burnout, possibly even later. It might not be that day, you're not feeling it, but it's something that you don't want to kind of incentivize and say, okay, I'm just going to do these 3 hours and then I'm going to go away and something like that. So you want to make sure that you're breaking up every task that you can into smaller chunks. And so how it works is that, next slide, good. You choose the task that you're going to get done. So say it's studying for an exam. And you know that you need a couple hours to study. There's an exam next week. And what you're going to do is set a timer. And obviously the timings for this one specifically was 30-minute intervals, but you can also look at it as if that one doesn't specifically work for you, you always want to be doing a bulk of work and then a small break that gives you, satisfaction or something that gets your mind off of it. You're going to focus on the task at hand for 25 minutes. And then when the timer stops, you're going to put a check mark on the piece of paper. This is a little archaic. You're going to stop what you're doing. Make sure you know where you're at. So maybe if you're studying, you just leave your books there. Maybe you're in the library and you decide to go get a coffee or take a walk around the building or something like that. And so here it says, go for a walk, grab a coffee. I did not even read that spot when I was studying this, so I appreciate that they use that. And you're going to repeat the process until you've finished. They also go through a step of, when you have a very long task, you want to change the intervals. So it says, I think after you do this process 4 times. So after 5, you're going to do an even longer break. So if it's like a full day of work and it's maybe your weekend and you're trying to figure out all the different things you're doing, you want to make sure you break up things, not just, okay, I'm only going to get 5 minutes. If it's, the half day, go get lunch, go do something like that. But this is a way that then you can train your brain to say, okay, I know I have this time coming up. So while you're doing the work, you know that there's a break coming. It's very tedious when you say, okay, for the next 2 hours, I have to be focusing on this one thing. You're going to tire yourself out. So knowing that, okay, the timer goes off, I have 5 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and do it, is very beneficial. This is for creative thinkers and people that feel burnt out from work and school. And I have definitely used this before and felt like it was very beneficial, but it's something that I feel like I forget to do and that it's there. So it's one of those things that I like reminding myself that that is a thing. I think they make specific timers. I think it's like a tomato. Yeah, it's a tomato shaped timer. And so you can get something physical. You can also get apps that have it, or you can just use like a timer on your phone and set it up that way. But I feel like the tomato would be really fun to like walk around with. And this is something that doesn't just teach time management. It also teaches you setting goals and achieving them, because you're saying in the next 25 minutes, I want to get to maybe the next chapter in my book, or I want to make sure that I finish the piece. So if the piece is only 5 minutes and I need to practice a couple sections, I'm giving myself enough window time to achieve it. And it shows that I have that skill of making sure I'm good to go on the piece. The third one is the Eisenhower Matrix, and this is something that I'm pretty sure I learned from Allison Lehman. And so this was from the president, where he faced difficult decisions every day. And so we made a matrix. So we have the two different axes. And what happens with them is that, and they all have D words to remember. So it's a do, decide, delegate, and delete. You can also find other variants if you don't prefer that. But it's one of those things that you're having the two axes and you're basing it off of the urgency and the importance. And so there's definitely things that if you, and the axis helps because you can just populate the tasks that you have to do or the problems in each of them. And then you just know, okay, I can start with the top left, which is the urgent and the important. It needs to get done. And you're going to probably get in trouble if you don't figure it out. So this says that we're going to organize the quadrants into important versus unimportant and urgent versus not urgent. And the graphic is actually on the previous slide. So I'm going to show it up here. So the nice thing about this is that if you have someone else in your chapter that can do something. So most of the time I'm looking at the presidents. I feel like we always talk about delegating skills, but I feel like sometimes the presidents delegate the wrong things. They say, okay, I know I can do this and I know that I want someone else to do it before me because I don't have enough time. And so they delegate it. Some other times I feel like they see a problem. So for example, maybe like a service project, and they immediately think, okay, I don't have to do anything for this. I can just tell my VPSP to go ahead and do this, or VPS. And the problem with that is that you would still want to help out in some facet, but the way that the delegation happens is just, okay, I'm just going to push it off my plate and not think about it anymore. The way that at least I operate, and especially my job, is that we do like feelers. I think Google email actually put this in. So after a couple of days, if you haven't heard back from anything, you just say, hey, I'm still working on this. Is there any update on it? We do it for clients too, because they're very busy. Our software is not the most important thing. They actually have clients they have to talk to in the hospitals. And so it's one of those things that if you don't find a follow-up, you're still there to kind of give them the jump that they need to be like, oh yes, I was delegated this. I want to make sure I get it done, notify the correct people. There's also the sense of the last one, which is the delete. And that I think is something that is also in the realm of just saying no to things. And it's definitely okay to say no after you've said yes. It's one of those things that I feel like I'm still learning on, where I will always want to try and help out. And if I have a lot of pans in the fire, as my therapist calls it, is that you need to make sure that you're not burning yourself out and that you don't have too many things going at the same time. And so if I know that I've already answered something as a yes, and I said, okay, I know in the future, I'm going to put it on my calendar. And as I'm looking towards it and I say, I'm not going to get this done in time, I will try my best to notify the person and say, hey, things happened, something came up. And it's one of those things that I think takes a lot of skill and practice on, and it's not the end of the world. Things go on, even if you can't get every single thing done. So I like that delete, that you're just going to move it out of the way. This is good for people in leadership positions. As I said, the example for the chapter president and critical thinkers. You're going to look at each problem in this kind of axis mode and figure that out. The next one is Parkinson's Law. And this is probably one that I go towards, and I'm not really proud of it, but it's for procrastinating. And you're trying to make sure that you get everything done in the time that you're allotting. And sometimes, and the way that I look at it is that it could be both a positive and a negative, because you're kind of only giving yourself the amount of time to do it, The problem and the negative where procrastination comes into play is that it's literally due the day or the time that you're figuring it out. But the way that the law works is that if you just set the time beforehand, then you get it in on time and you're not stressing, but you still gave yourself that same window. And it's kind of a buffer. So if you know that something's due in a week, and you want to make sure that you get it done on time. Maybe it's a huge project and you have to talk to people, and maybe it's like a group project, or it's a service project, and you need to do a certain piece for it. If you give yourself, say, if you know it's going to take only a couple hours, but you say, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow because I know it's only going to take a couple hours. If you force the timeline ahead of time, then you'll still make it on time. And that's the point of it. So it's one of those things where I think we do, and this is the typical, oh, my uncle's always late by 5 minutes or maybe an hour to every meeting. So when we tell them the time, we're going to say, oh, it's actually at 9 a.m., not 10 a.m., because he'll still arrive at 10 a.m., but actually it was at 10 a.m. So it's one of those things where I feel like if you force it, it helps. But then if you start pushing back the time that you want to put into it, it's then not seen as a negative. It's more of a positive. So this is a very interesting example, is that working without a computer charger, I would never advise of this, but the concept is that now there's a specific amount of time. You can't keep going for 8 hours and into the night hours. You basically tell yourself, I only have this much time to work on it, and we're going to go ahead and do it. Get it done early. Set a timeline or deadline. And so it's one of those things where if I know my class is at 8 a.m. and I had band or something coming up, and I said, okay, what if I just made it do the day earlier, and I set myself to that time? It does twofold. Make sure that you're not late on it. And also it shows that you set the goal correctly and that you succeeded it. So you'll feel good about it. This one is technically not a time management technique, but that it's something that most techniques will use, because if you do it sooner than later, it's helpful. This is great for procrastinators like myself and people who work well under pressure, which is also myself. So I really liked this one. The next one is time blocking method. And this is something that when I saw the image, I was like, oh my God, I did that in college. And I didn't know that there was a name for it. This also gave the example of Elon Musk, which is a little controversial right now in news, but basically it's time blocking, where you have different blocks of time and you're associating the tasks with the block of time. So you know, at this time, I'm going to be doing X, and I know it's going to take this long. This one, you basically, as the picture showed, you make a whole schedule. This is really good for calendaring. This is what we use at work to make sure that if I know that I'm going to be working with a client for 2 hours, I've blocked that time off. I can also block off a 15-minute prep time beforehand and a 15-minute time after in case it runs over. Something that then I can do as like a wiggle room. If some other client says, hey, I want to start right at 2 o'clock, I know I can move that around. And what's nice about it is that you can specify the time that you're putting in each of the blocks. I always try and stagger them. So if I'm doing, and this kind of comes back to the Pomodoro technique, if I see that there's a very big meeting, like 3-4 hours long, and it's something that's out of our control, it's like New York State of Health is coming in and talking for a couple hours, they will do some breaks in between, but sometimes I'll have to get some work done that day and know that I'm going to have to get it done. So I will put a block in, maybe in between that, I'll put maybe, a 10-minute block just to get my mind off of what I'm working on and do something else that I know I can do in that time. So I have some daily tasks where I have to go run some reports, look at them, notify some people if there's updates. That only takes 5-10 minutes. So I know at that point I'm going to do it. The interesting part about this is that I know exactly when I'm going to do it. So if it's out of the routine of myself, so I know every morning at 10 a.m. it comes in, I might notify the people and say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to be sending this email at 2 p.m. just to let you know, because I've already earmarked that time off and I know exactly when I'm going to get it done, and I know I can get it done. So I like this because it's showing you can prove to yourself that you know how long everything will take. It shows that you can kind of manage around the blocks. And this is also good for when you're working with other people, especially within your chapter, and trying to get everyone together at the same time, because now you can look at which blocks are buffers and you can say, okay, I can move this time to be accommodating, but I know that I have all of these other things, and that you can schedule it out and make sure that you're present in that time. And this one just says to add buffers. Cannot stress this enough. You want to make sure that you're not overdoing it. I had 1 year where I think I had 5 classes back to back to back to back to back. And so trying to find food in between those classes was hard, and I didn't want to eat in class. So it was definitely frustrating. And I just had a friend that did the same thing. He was like, yeah, I'm my Fridays are great, but also my Thursdays are just wild. So you don't want to stress yourself out and putting too many things on one day. This is good for working students or parents and analytical thinkers. The next one I like is just getting things done method. And this is something that I think me and my partner work on best, because it's something that if you know what needs to get done, but then you feel like you're not making any progress, this gives you the proof that you're making progress. And so this is something where you just write down all of the actions that you need to work on. So cleaning the bathroom, or, you know, getting this assignment done. The thing about this though that I like is that you can see if it's something that you have to do, if you know, if I need to do it with someone else. So if it's a group project, I'm going to make sure that I give enough time to say, okay, I need to get all these people together, or I need to send it over to someone else. And you can prioritize each of those things as saying, okay, if I know that I have to send this over to someone and it's due in a week, I'm not going to start that and get that done late on my list, because I'm still going to have to talk to that person. They're still going to need to have a respectable amount of time to work on their part or figure out a time that we can meet. So I always try and push those forward. Whenever I'm doing something myself, I try and say, okay, what are the things that need to be prioritized based on the importance, but also how fast I can get it done. So I know myself. And if I say, okay, it's something that if I just did a very big task and I want to go play some video games to relax, and then I give myself an hour for that, and I come back out of it, I might still want to play video games. So I'm going to do something that maybe only takes 10 minutes. I'm going to go, you know, change out the towels in the bathroom, something that's still on my list, but now isn't as big. So you want to make sure that you're not putting too many of the big priorities, but also put everything. So as you're running through it and you're like, I'm not feeling up to, you know, renovating our basement, or doing a whole essay or something like that, I would say, okay, I know I have to go talk to someone about an idea I had for the band, or I have to go ahead and do something else that might be very small and tedious, but might have always been thrown off the list of priority in the other method. So this is something that then you can say, I at least did 5 things on my list, and they might not have been in the other techniques as big of a priority. So this is something that I like to also throw into my routine. And this is for people who struggle to focus on one thing at a time. I know whenever I look at a task and I say, okay, but I can't do that until I've done this, that at least shows me then how I order my list and what I can put in there. And then people who feel overwhelmed in their daily lives, that's also me, and, and trying to get everything done. So I think it's good to put an emphasis on, if you at least do a couple of things a day, you still feel productive and you know that you've gotten those things done. Okay. Then technique 7 is rapid planning method. And this one is a little straightforward in terms of you're trying to figure out what you need to make sure, how do I want to say this? You're trying to categorize things and just get those things done as fast as possible. So when you chunk your tasks into what things are pertaining to, they use the categories of like, if it's a personal, school related, career related. So it's all of those kind of chunks. And you want to make sure that you have why you're doing it, what you're doing, and then how you can get there. So it's one of those things that if you kind of place out, and I always think of it as columns, and I think, yeah, they say 3 columns. You want to be able to put out as much of what you need to get done in those stream lanes, and make sure that you're getting there. I think, what is it? Creating a power role for yourself. I don't really use this one, so that's why I'm kind of going through it fast. But it says, if you're a student, you might call yourself the study queen, anything that will jazz you up to get the goal completed. It's one of those things that you're still trying to divide out what you're working on, and then you're kind of putting on hats. So if you're, you know, right now you're on the president hat, and then you're on the band hat, and you're trying to get all of those things accomplished when you're in that role. This is something you might do without even knowing it, but it's trying to group the things together in a way that then because you're present in that moment doing whatever, you're able to do it. This is also helpful if you tend to try and multitask or switch between those lanes, because sometimes I just finished one task and I don't want to keep doing my band work anymore. So I've already, you know, rehearsed one thing, and now I want to go ahead and get something else done. And I switch my hats. This will at least show me exactly what I need to do in that lane. And I think it's something that's pretty good. Who is it? The motivational speaker, Tony Robbins. Good. This also works for students and parents and people who have long-term goals, because you're able to then say, okay, I know exactly I want in the future to have this sort of hat or responsibility. I know I want to run for a position or something like that. How do I get there? These are all the tasks that are going to pertain to that, but you don't have to worry about them if you're working on this other hat right there. Second to last is the pickle jar theory. And I liked this because I wanted to put in the meme from SpongeBob where they're trying to open the pickle jar. But there's three different components to the pickle jar. You have the sand, the pebbles, and the rocks. The sand is basically all of the disruptions in your life. So it says phone calls, text messages, maybe someone just running by your dorm and saying hi, you know, it's been a while. That will still distract you and you want to catch up. The pebbles are tasks that need to get completed. And this can be done by you or someone else. So those are just all the tasks. And then the rocks are the important tasks that need to get done today. So those are the most important things. And the idea of it is that you're going to begin by thinking about how your tasks for the day would fit into the above categories. So which ones are the rocks, which ones are the pebbles, and what is sand. And you're going to try and figure out how many things you can get into the jar. So you don't want to put too many things in. It would overfill, and that's not good. And then what happens is you try and leave enough buffer time to get everything done. So it's sort of like the time blocking, but you already are admitting that things are going to come up that are going to distract you. Those are the sands. So as you're trying to navigate the jar, you know that there's certain times where you might want to go check your phone. Someone might call you or text you and you want to catch up with them. So it's one of those things that if you plan yourself enough time and wiggle room, it's kind of like the pickle jar, and the time blocking is kind of melding, but you're giving yourself enough time to still say, I'm going to be productive for these many hours in the day. But as things come up, I'm not going to be very upset if it happens. I think, yeah, this is also a good one for visual people because they can actually go ahead and see a different method of it rather than the organizational, like very rigid time blocking. And this is for also concrete thinkers. And the last one, which is I think my personal favorite, and I have a story for it, is eat that frog technique. And this is from a quote from Mark Twain that says, eat a live frog for the first thing in the morning and nothing worse will happen to you for the rest of the day. It's I like the quote. The story is that we were cruising on vacation and we got off on one of the ports, and I think everyone had the same mentality where there's this kind of unspoken luck rule where if you make a sale the first person you speak to that day, everything else in the day is going to be great because you've already now worked up that courage to make the purchase. We upset a couple people because we kept going further inland and we didn't want to buy anything, so they were getting really annoyed. But it is one of those things that if you wake up and you start doing some very little tasks, you might feel accomplished enough and not want to tackle that big thing that you have to do. Where if you know there's a very big thing in the day and you try and do little things beforehand, you might have already used enough of your energy and your time that then you don't feel prepared or want to do that big thing. And so if you can try and move that thing, obviously if it's like a concert late in the afternoon, you're not going to be able to move it. But if it's something that, you really need to get done and you prioritize that first in the day, now everything else that you do is kind of a little bit easier. You know that you've already done that big thing. It's off your shoulders. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You've crossed it off the list of getting things done. And I think that it'll benefit you the rest of the day rather than lingering. And then I've found through my personal experience, there's plenty of times where I leave that last thing, I've done everything else, and I'm still like, okay, but now I still have to do that one big thing. And I feel like I didn't accomplish anything that day because that one big thing was so important. And so this is what you want to achieve most. So if it's a very big essay or something like that, and then maybe you just have to do, I've even chunked essays where I said, okay, I'm going to write the whole essay, I'm going to save my list of like resources and articles, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the MLA formatting later. That's a very smaller thing. I don't have to worry about it, and I already have all the material I need to do that project, but at least then it's out of my mind. It's just writing the essay. That's the big tackle, and I go ahead and do that. And this is funny because you're trying to do one big thing every single day. So if it's some sort of big long-term goal, you can kind of then chunk up those necessary things. And each day you're going to say, okay, the big thing I'm going to do today is do some research, or I'm going to figure out what I want to do as a project for the sorority, something like that. And then the next day could be, okay, well, now I have to go reach out to the person. That's step 2. I'm not going to, bring it up to the chapter if I don't have details yet. Now I've talked to the person. Now I'm going to bring it up to chapter, make sure that that's maybe the biggest thing of your day. It could be. So you want to make sure that you're setting up the goals appropriately and getting it done. And the last, the part for this is that there's abstract thinkers and people with long-term goals. So this is very over a span of time rather than just the day, because obviously you want to do more than just eat a frog. So I think that this is a beneficial technique. Here is the flow chart. It's a little small just because it's very vertical, and I feel like it's very good for phones. And I also included the link, and I'm gonna grab it actually and put it in chat. So if you want to click on it or save it for yourself, you can. And what happens is these are just very simple questions through the workflow to figure out, and these are things that you might change over time. So it's something that I'm going to probably save in my back pocket and look at, if there's a new problem that doesn't really make sense for me to work on using the current methodology that I prefer or I'm using, I would then go ahead and just work through the workflow and say, okay, this is something maybe I should look at. So for example, there's, if I need to manage my day, week, or month, there's different options for it. So obviously some of these are very long-term goals, and some of them are very, okay, today's the day I need to do this, and I need to make sure I have it ready to go. So those are very different aspects of it, and I wanted to make sure that this flow chart works out for it. So the biggest thing I like about it too is that it does prefer certain personalities, I'll say. So I procrastinate a lot. So in the middle, it goes through and says, okay, do you like making lists? Do you like to procrastinate? Do you like focusing one thing at a time? Those are all very quick questions that you can ask around the room for your chapter or for your friend group or something like that, or your, your class group if you're in a class project, and make sure that if this needs to work for everyone in the group, that then you can say, okay, well, what's the majority of people working this way? If it's something that then you can combine with other people, so maybe the majority really like doing the time blocking method to say, okay, we're going to set up a couple of hours and we need to make sure that we do the prep work and the project and then the cleanup. There might be someone else that then will then say, okay, but also I really like the Pomodoro technique, so we're going to incorporate that into the time block. So when we're in this one time block, we're going to give ourselves the 5 minutes in between. So you can still mix and match them for what you're working on, and not one size fits all. So you can go ahead and look at those. Okay, I think I'm doing good on time. The next slide that I had is just a block of what tools that we can use for the techniques that we've already talked about. And this is kind of where we're going to go back to that brainstorming that we had. And I'm going to try and fill in. I don't know if while I fill in, let's see. Oh, I can. Perfect. So I'm going to start filling in as you guys pull in what things that you already use. And I'm going to incorporate mine too. And we're going to put them underneath the correct category that we think. And there could be multiple tools and techniques that this would fit in, but I want to make sure that we grab everyone's input as well. So for example, where is time blocking? So in time blocking, I use like Google Calendar, but this could be literally any kind of calendaring app. It's something that when I'm figuring out my schedule and I say, okay, well, what time do I have open to give you guys? It would be on my Google Calendar. That way I'm good there. Another fun fact is that when you are time managing your own personal life and with all the different ways that you operate, it's nice to have different calendars in the specific tool. So don't put everything all in one calendar. It's good to be able to click off certain things. Sometimes you'll get external calendars. So I have one for another band I'm in, and it's nice to then be able to look at everything all together and see where the overlaps happen and say, okay, what can I move around? So that's my example for the time blocking method. There's also the rapid planning method, and this I'm going to put Todoist if you've ever heard of it. It's another kind of, and I'm also going to put that in the getting things done, because you're basically just checking things off. And this does have a free version, but you can also pay for it to get more features and put notes and make it more collaborative with other folks. But what's nice about it is that there's this mentality of the pipelines, and you're basically putting to-do lists on each of them. You can put deadlines, you can set up reminders and stuff like that. And then if you get the paid version, you can even collaborate with other people and say, okay, this project needs to have these subtasks. So maybe it's coming to chapter meeting. Your president needs to make the agenda. Your VPM needs to make sure that they're up to date on the MC class. Your secretary has to make sure that the agenda was sent out. So that can't happen until the president has happened with making the agenda. You can place it in that and then make it recurring. And every week, everyone's just getting getting it done. And we can all go to there to see, okay, what hasn't happened? Maybe go check on the person and say, hey, I didn't see that you've done this. Can you go ahead and do it by tomorrow morning? Sounds good. So that's another example that I use for those. Feel free to come off mute or put in the chat what you've written down or what you're thinking about. And I can go ahead and add it into these blocks. I think also apps or physical timer for the Pomodoro. I know that one. Let's see. The Eisenhower is just the grid itself. So I'm trying to think if anyone does this. This is typically good for like a start brainstorming, like a group project thing too. So I'm trying to think if there's anything other than just doing the grid, doing the method. Any takers? Let's see. It's okay too if you're just taking in everything. I know that was a lot of information. So I figured this was something that we could work on together. And if there's anything afterwards that you're still thinking about with this, we can always go ahead and look at it too after the fact. I could always update the slides and send it over to Leslie to update. So those are some of those examples. I think for the 80-20 rule, it is sort of just a way that you're perceiving your tasks and prioritizing them. So typically I would use that with tandem to like getting things done, or the Eisenhower Matrix to say, okay, if I need to do these things within that do box, I would go ahead and organize them that way. So I'm going to use other tool or other techniques here. And then let's see. Pomodoro Technique. Most of the time I've seen apps and physical timers for it. And if you can remember to do it, you could try and just look at the time, but typically having a timer and a beep to notify you is good. Eisenhower Matrix is kind of just a tool that you would write out on a piece of paper, or you could make some sort of like columns and a list if you needed to work it out that way, but remembering what the two different axes of the importance and the urgence are. Parkinson's Law, I don't know if there's a tool for it other than like a trait to just procrastinate. And it's just setting up things ahead of time. So that way you're not actually late. It's the infamous band slogan of to be on time, or to be early is to be on time is to be late, to be on late is unacceptable. So that's kind of where that comes from. Any sort of calendaring for the time block method. This is really good, especially for students, because you're given a schedule for your classes. And so having that listed and figuring out, okay, I need 10 minutes to get to my class. I know I can do homework between this time and this time. So timing those out for students is really good. Getting things done is also I feel like a student way, always having a planner and saying, okay, I need to do this homework by the next day, and then checking it off and getting that serotonin boost of like, yes, I've been productive is really helpful. I see Madison said I've used Google Sheets and templates like this for the time blocking method before. Perfect. And then provided an image. I know I made a sheet that was like 15-minute intervals. And I remember some of my friends were like, what are you doing? And I would like merge all the cells when it was the blocks. And I found it to be very useful for something that I know is a routine. So I think if there's certain things that are going to be routines each week, like bands and sorority work, that's good. And then having all of that on like a calendar app, so that way those are recurring, and then I know exactly when I can do like the one-time event. So it's like, oh, I'm going to go get lunch with someone, I'm going to plan it out next week. I found calendaring is really helpful for things in the future too, because there's sometimes where I have friends that are like, oh, well, we'll just do it eventually. And I'm like, okay, but if you don't put something on the calendar, you might forget about it. And then even if it doesn't work to work out, I'm always a fan of just pushing it forward, not deleting it, not being like, okay, we're going to do it some other time, just push it another time. We have meetings just to set up calendars sometimes. So we'll meet with a client to just figure out when we're going to meet with the client next. It's insane, but I think it works out really well, because then it gives us those touch points to say, okay, well, we met this time, we couldn't get any work done. Let's go ahead and look for 2 weeks from now? What works on your calendar? So that's definitely good in the real world sense, and also for a college sense. You want to make sure that you're not booking your weeks really strong. So when the sorority starts taking over right in your finals week, you want to make sure that you've planned ahead accordingly for that. The rapid planning method, again, I use Todoist. It's one of those things that I feel like blocking the silos is really helpful. So if you say, okay, I need to figure out what I'm doing for band, I have all my band things right there, and it gives the list a different methodology. You can also use that app to then look at everything as like getting things done. So it can then take this different silos of the different hats and then push them all together to say, okay, today you're doing this from this category, this from this category, and you can just check those off and be done with them. So I feel like that's good. Pickle jar method is just, or pickle jar theory is just a different way of looking, I feel like, at like the time block in a different manner. So that one I'm just gonna leave blank. And then the eat that frog technique, I don't know if there's a tool for it. I think it would probably just be sending like some sort of message to a friend being like, wow, I can't believe I just did that whole thing that is huge just in the morning. Or at least getting it done. And then it's probably just a personal goal to say, okay, I've done this, knowing that then tomorrow is another day and you can get that done. It is 11 Central Time, I am seeing. And so I want to make sure I gave some time for questions. So I went ahead and did this. I'm looking at chat. So I want to give a couple minutes. I think, Erica, you're starting at 12:15 or 11:15? Okay. Cool. I know. I have to keep converting times. Let's see. So I'll give a couple minutes for questions. I'm still going to be here. Up next, we have Erica speaking with her presentation, and I'm going to be hosting for that. So I'm going to keep this going for right now. But feel free to go get some water, do a bathroom break, go pet a dog, do all of those lovely things. And I will leave this up. I'm still here to chat about time management. I hope you found this useful. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Go check out that article. It's basically the same things that I put in the presentation. There is a couple more like resources they put at the bottom. They compiled that list from like 3 different things that were 10 tips on time management. So I found like that was a good representation of it all. Yeah, I mean, you can go pet a dog. It might not be your dog, but petting a dog has been proven to, help most people. So I like it. I would bring my dog in, but she'd probably bark a lot and not want to stay in here. So I was like, I'll leave her out there. But okay. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording. If there's anything else, though, I'll be around.